we literally, for every piece of content, ask ourselves, what is the value here? Is this going to help somebody? Is it educational? We have different content pillars. Does it fit into one of these pillars? What's the point of posting this? Because if it's just a pretty picture, it's just not going to do anything for us.
What metrics do you look at in your social tools that kind of give you a feel of kind of what's happening?
I would say...
Today on the podcast, we'll be talking to Assunta Anif. Assunta is Director of Social Media Strategy for Kiss Products. You may wonder why we're talking about social media when we focus on the digital customer experience, but what we're going to see is how social has evolved from being just about followers to being more now about community. We're also going to talk about how that community can be used to measure sentiment and feedback, and that sentiment and feedback can actually inform product teams in terms of R&D. And then Assunta is going to end by giving us some nice advice about how legacy brands like hers can make that transition into building strong communities. We're really excited about this very different aspect of the digital customer experience. Let's get started. Assunta, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. Very, very excited to have you on the show.
Hi, Shamir. It's so great to be here. Thank you for having me.
One of the things that makes me so excited about this is because we get to talk today about social media. And it's funny because the podcast talks about really the post-click experience. So what happens when people start to get into that mode where they're really trying to make a decision, they're trying to develop that relationship with a particular brand, decide if they're going to become a customer, if they're going to stay as a customer. And a lot of times people don't associate that necessarily with social media, but that could be because people have a very kind of archaic view of social media where it's all about how many people are following you. And for some people, that's important. You know, we see a lot of people who have followers on Instagram or X or whatever the case may be. But your real focus is really about community. And you could see just by using that word that has a powerful impact on that digital customer experience. Can you talk a little bit about that transition and why it's not so much about followers, but really more about community when it comes to talking about social media?
Yeah, definitely. I think like over the past decade, that metric has changed. Like the measurement of success, it used to be the follower count. Every brand wanted to have 1 million followers on Instagram, and it was like so important. Which, I mean, it does have its importance, but I think now more than ever, really, community is such a stronger metric, I guess, so to speak, if you want to use that. But it's really, I think, the most important on social media. But it's a little bit hard in a sense to like measure what that is, right? How do you measure a community? But I think that vanity metric of the follower count and that growth, it's kind of died down. Like new brands, indie brands, they're up and coming. They have smaller follower count, but you have such a loyal fan base. I think that's what really is like a success there. Community, connection, that's the point of the social platforms now. That's what we're seeing. It's less more so, it's less more so just like a pretty catalog, because I feel like that's what the platforms used to be, right? Like everything was so pretty and like laid out perfectly. Your Instagram feed had to be so cohesive. And I think now, like, especially with like TikTok not being like that and like people just posting for entertainment purposes, like it definitely has changed the entire landscape of social.
So that being the case, has you seen this shift, right, to really just having a number of followers, but to trying to create a community? How has having a community, from a corporate standpoint, how have you seen that impact your brand or just brands in general?
I mean, there's multiple ways that having like a fan base that becomes the community can be like very impactful. One thing that comes to mind like immediately is like crowdsourcing, tapping into our fan base to see like what are they looking for in nails and designs. What are they needing? Like what's some pain points or things that are gaps in our industry that people are wanting and looking for. I think it's like really creating that space to listen and to have our consumer feel like they have a voice, because like that's who matters at the end of the day. Like we're a brand, we're a product, and we have to provide so what the consumer is wanting and looking for. So I think providing this like safe space for them where they feel like they can like talk to us is really important.
That's great to hear. You know, one of the things we love talking about here is how important getting feedback and research is to the digital customer experience. Because, as you mentioned so beautifully, the customer is what it's about, right? They should be at the center of the experience. So, understanding how they're thinking, how they're feeling, what their wants and needs are, what their shifting priorities are, that can so incredibly and powerfully not just inform the experience in general, but inform the product, right? You know, be able to provide that kind of information back to product teams. So, it makes me wonder, is that something that you guys are doing actively, passively, or both, right? And so what I mean is it just a matter of you kind of monitoring and watching the conversations that are happening in community and extracting value from that? Are you actively reaching out and posting kind of polls or questions or kind of interjecting in there and getting feedback? Or is it a mix of both?
It's actually all of the above. So we're very actively pulling these reports. Every message, every comment that is posted or a reply on our posts, we are looking at. We're seeing, we're like tagging it, and we do a very somewhat tedious at the time export and extract of all of the comments, and we kind of group together like what are people saying, what are people looking for, what are negative comments, where's the positive sentiment, what are people wanting, liking, needing. And then we take this back to our product development team, who really takes to it right away. That's something that I've have been doing my 9 years here at Kiss, and over like the 9 years, I've seen, because of this sentiment, because of the product feedback that we're getting on social media, there have been changes in our product. So it's just amazing to see like actually listening and then the research and development going into it for production.
That's really great. I wonder, and you know, I don't want to put you on the spot, but can you think of a particular example where you kind of saw that feedback from social, from community, and how that translated directly into an impact on product?
I would say our pre-glue adhesive impress nails. A lot of people were saying like the nails don't stick. They don't stay on. So we promise that they last 7 to 10 days with proper application and prep. But a lot of people were writing in customer service, social media, and saying like the nails are not sticking. I'm doing the prep, I'm doing the application properly. And it was a little like infuriating to some of the loyal customers who were coming to us on social saying like it's not working. And then we're saying like, oh, make sure you're doing the proper prep and the application. They're like, I know how to do it. Like, it's just the product is not working. So, we acquired all of these comments, and our product team went to the drawing board. They were formulating different pre-glue adhesive. And it's funny because when we had launched the new adhesive, then we started getting complaints that it was too strong of a hold. So it's like, wow, we can't win. But yeah, that was definitely like one product development that really stands out with this Impress Nails specific brand.
That's a great example. You know, it just shows how powerful it is because, you know, as brands, marketers, we so often get in our own heads, and we can just assume that the problem is the customer, right? Even maybe the initial response from any brand, including Kiss, may have been like, to your point, you're just doing it wrong. Like you're not applying it right. And then you kind of get into this back and forth with the customer. But after a while, it's like, okay, this isn't one or two people who are saying this, right? There seems to be a number of people, and to your point, a number of loyal customers who are savvier, more capable customers, and they're saying they're having problems. So, is it really them or is it us? And then as a brand, the ability to really look at yourself in the mirror and kind of say, well, maybe this is something that we're doing wrong. and let's go back to the drawing board and use that, you can see how that would breed a stronger sense of loyalty on the part of the customer to feel like they're being responded to. The brand is listening to me. They're iterating and adapting based on the things I'm saying, and how that would really tie them even further, more strongly to Kiss and kind of drive that lifetime value. Is that something that you're kind of seeing? Is that kind of the story you're telling as you're evangelizing the importance of community?
Yes, exactly. And we'll even take these comments and we'll create like a social media post that shows like all the negative comments. And then we'll say like, we've made these improvements. So it's not just like a one-off, like these are ongoing initiatives. Like it could be for, let's say like a Halloween collection. So maybe somebody can say like the product, maybe the quality of a certain collection is not as superior as some maybe like a colored or design nail that's around for the whole year. Which sometimes we tend to do, like see the quality of a collection that could be only for a month at a time is not as strong as something that is like an evergreen style. Um, Same thing, same process. It goes to product development and then they go to the drawing board to understand like what is it about this collection from the vendor, from the manufacturer, and how can we make these improvements for stronger apex or whatever it may be that they look into.
As you guys kind of monitor that feedback, and in particular, you mentioned something super important that you monitor the sentiment, right? The overall feeling of the feedback, the positives and the negatives. Is that something you're doing on a consistent, ongoing basis to make sure that you're kind of seeing, hey, there was a spike here. What's going on? Oh, we just released a new product, or it's a new season, or maybe something else happened in the marketplace. Maybe a competitor introduced a product. Are you kind of ongoing monitoring that and looking for those kind of those spikes up and down to see what's going on?
So the tool that we use is actually AI. It'll automatically predict what the messaging is. And we all know AI is not perfect. So a lot of times we do have to manually adjust it. So just because of like the language on social, it could be something that comes across as negative, but it really is a positive attribute. So we'll just have to manually make that adjustment. Otherwise, it does skew like those final results. But we're always actively listening in that sense for sentiment on top of the messaging when it comes to like products.
I wonder, because you're having this conversation, right, with the community. This is something that you and I have talked about previously. I think brands sometimes think that, oh no, we don't want to open up that Pandora's box because now it's going to be like, okay, they're going to want perfection from us. Like we have to adhere to every demand, every comment. We have to address everything. But one of the things that you said that really stood out to me is that they don't want perfection, or they don't expect it anyway. They just want to be, heard and related to. Can you talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, I think it's being heard, being relatively relatable, but I think also transparency from a brand to the consumer is so important. Um, I mean, there's times like something so silly, like a giveaway winner. Maybe we like announced the wrong winner and the people that had entered call us out for it. Instead of panicking, oh my gosh, we did call out like the wrong giveaway winner. Let's just have two. And then everybody's happy and we're transparent about making like a oops mistake. And then it just makes a good experience out of something that was just like a mistake. Like we're human. We make mistakes. But going back to like what you had said about like feeling like relatable, like that is being relatable, right? Like I am a person writing back to you as a community manager. So I think like that's really important. Like we try to personalize our communication on social specifically, and our community manager, she'll sign off like her name when she's like DMing. Like it really is personal. We also started like a broadcast channel on Instagram to try to really have that sense of community and have even like a more exclusive content for those who wanted to subscribe. And it was like literally me posting, getting doing my nails and getting them put on for my sister-in-law's wedding, and I took everybody along with me, showing them like, here's my necklace and it matches my nails. So I think it's just it's time consuming. It's not easy to like be almost like a personality. But I think people like that. They like to know like, oh, this is the person behind the brand.
Yeah, it really kind of humanizes the brand, right? Makes it real so that it's not just like this corporate giant, right? But there are people there who are working, who are kind of showing what they're doing. People there who are listening to me, right? Who kind of care about what I have to say. And I could see how that would be super impactful, right? To people to be able to have that sense of um, there's a person there, and that person is taking my feedback and doing something with it, right? That's ultimately impacting the company. Um, did you find, you said you've been at KISS for 9 years now. Have you found that getting people to kind of engage with and listen to that feedback coming from social, coming from community, was that kind of a learning curve for the organization, kind of getting everyone on board with that?
At first, it was like minimal. It was minimal, I would say, like commentary and like feedback that was coming from the social media platforms. But as we were building up the fan base and then producing more content that was relatable, um, that was almost like inspirational and aspirational to the consumer, I think they felt that they can speak to the brand. So then I think the types of comments were changing. And then they were kind of like talking to a friend, like, hey, this happened to me with the nails. Like, can you guys help? Um, and it really provided like opportunity for us to have like one-on-one to maybe guide them with application or maybe sizing. Because a lot of times we're seeing if a customer has like a negative or poor experience, it could just be like educational, like or application error. So it's just like a matter of just educating them and like really taking the time to just say like, hey, you have to do it this way, not this way. So many times nails are being applied upside down for like shorter nail lengths. And it's like, well, they tore because by the cuticle, it's tapered. So of course it's thinner and that's why it's tearing. So it's just like in a kind language, you have to kind of say like you did it wrong, but here's how to do it better for a better experience. And that really goes a long way.
Yeah, I love the fact that you guys get to have those kinds of conversations, with your customers on such a personal level. It really shows the power of kind of what you've built there in that sense of community. But it also makes me think. I'd love to get kind of a step back because it makes me think. Okay, well, a lot of times building a community is easier said than done, and I think for you and Kiss, it's probably a little bit harder just because being an older legacy brand is a lot different than kind of being the new kid on the block, right? So many brands today that get started, or even just in the past few years, are very much founder-led brands where the founder's out there, they're the one on social, they're the ones developing the following, and then the brand kind of comes from that, right? It comes from there as an extension of their personal brand, and people know that founder, they know that face, they trust them, they've been following them and their journey and what they've been doing with whatever product, especially in a field like beauty. But here you're this established player, and now the digital age has kind of come upon you, and now you're saying, well, now we need to build a community, but people don't know who our founder is, right? They don't know who our CEO is. They don't know those people. How have you kind of met that challenge in terms of kind of coming at it from the other way of being this more established brand and now needing to establish this community?
Yeah, it's kind of like the opposite, right? We're in retailers and now we're just building digitally. Um, it has been a challenge. It is challenging. There's no lie. Um, I mean, we're really just trying to tap into the personalities within who's behind the brand. And that could be employee advocacy, employee content, and then also influencer campaigns, just really trying to see who influencer wise is genuinely wearing our product and then working with them. Um, and then also, we've newly been tapping into users. We see like, I guess, super fans, super users, and we're reaching out to them to see if they're interested in wanting to be almost like a brand advocate. Like they kind of are already, but we're taking that time and effort to reach out to them, to notice them and recognize them and say, hey, like, we notice you're always commenting, you're always posting. We'd love to like send you product. It's challenging, but I think because of this, this is like the way to go. And using the consumer is probably the smartest way because it's tapping into the user as well as creating a loyal brand advocate who can also tap into their audience or their family and friends. So it's not just the personality or the founder. So I think it's, yes, challenging and it's different, but I think it could be better. And it's something that most recently we've been trying to do with like brand advocacy and community building initiatives. Because, like I said, like we're doing a lot of digital community building, but nothing like so much in real life. So hopefully we can kind of expand that. But yeah, it's definitely a challenge when we've been around, we've been at retail, and now we're just starting a D2C and a digital space. So
Well, I think it's super smart that you're thinking about it in terms of, okay, well, we don't necessarily have the kind of the founder-led model, but we do have a loyal base of people who have been using our product perhaps for a long time. And some of those people are very much active on social. So how do we kind of leverage that existing power, right? And kind of flip the model on its head and say, okay, maybe instead of being founder-led, maybe we're customer-led from a social standpoint. And how do we empower those, as you mentioned, those brand advocates and kind of give them the ability to be the ones that are kind of the cheerleaders in the digital space, and really kind of the power brokers, so to speak, in the communities that allow you to definitely speak to the KISS brand and what you're doing out there. So I think that's a super smart way of doing it, and you can certainly see how impactful that is. I wonder, you mentioned how much feedback you get from the community and how that's influenced product. Do you also find that influence impacts marketing as well? So marketing messaging, how you talk to the different to your customer base, is that also influenced by some of that feedback or some of the listening that you're doing from the community?
yes, so we can definitely see like two different demographics from the two brands that we do have. Um, Obvious like demographic insights from the platforms itself, but also through social listening, seeing how people are talking, even the platforms that they're talking on. We see it for one brand specifically that we have higher engagement on Facebook. So they have like an older audience. And then we see like Instagram and TikTok for another. And those are like more trendy consumers that are just more like young and youthful and like spunky in a sense. So there's definitely different messaging, different communication, even the content. Like right now, it's a little bit similar, but that's like another challenge that we're looking to like differentiate the two brands with speaking to the different consumers.
I love that. You know, one of the things that we always say is a challenge for a lot of brands, especially legacy brands, is that communication and an alignment between marketing and product. And it's interesting that you guys have found a way to leverage community as a means by which to bridge that gap, right? To get marketing informing product, to get product informing and communicating with marketing, and have that all be again with the customer at the center of that, feeding that information and having not just a one-way flow of information, but a lot of times really, as you mentioned, having a conversation with the customer, right? Having a bit of back and forth. You even mentioned in the one example from a product standpoint, how you got this feedback, you adjusted the product, you put this new product out there, then you got more feedback saying, well, now you guys went too much in the other direction, right? So there's this back and forth conversation taking place between the organization and the customer via this online community. And it's allowing you to kind of iterate in real time and move a lot faster than probably you ever have as a legacy brand, I'm imagining.
Yeah. And actually, when you're talking about like back and forth conversations, something that I kind of like giggled at was in a lot of like we see it specifically in ad comments where people may be new to the product and they'll say like, oh, it didn't last long. But then we've been seeing other like super users say, well, did you use that? Like, we don't have to even respond. Like, somebody else is responding on behalf of the brand. And that's like amazing to see. Like, we don't even have to talk or reply. Like, we literally have a thread of other consumers like giving their best application tips or tricks or whatnot. So that's like really rewarding to see.
Yeah, that's got to be really kind of exciting to kind of watch that take place, especially if you're kind of watching it in real time as you're checking in and seeing this happen, and people kind of help other people because of their knowledge of the product and their loyalty to it, which is, I'm sure, inspiring other people, therefore, to have a little bit more affinity to the product because these other people are kind of like, yeah, I use this. This works for me. Here's how I use it. And that's always going to be 1,000 times more powerful than any message you could put out there, right? Has the company, has the organization. I wonder, in all the things that you've seen happen over your 9 years at KISS, and how the community has, I'm sure, grown, how it's evolved, how it's become more impactful and powerful. Um, this is, of course, pure speculation, but like, where do you see this going? Like, how do you see social continuing to evolve and change, and community continue to evolve and change moving forward?
I think now we're seeing it more than ever. Things that have been digital are becoming in real life. And especially like there's like thousands of articles out there, right, about Gen Z wanting brands in real life events to create relationships with them. And I think some brands are doing it really well. And I think for like a legacy brand like us, it takes longer to like move the needle. Um, but I think we've seen celebrities and like these big ambassadors as part of campaigns, but I think we're going to start seeing like consumers in campaigns and campaigns to be less produced, which we're seeing now, right? Like we're seeing a lot of what everybody is saying, social first campaigns, right? Less produced. Looks like it's shot from the iPhone, easy to digest and consume. But I definitely think the consumer will become the campaign. At least my opinion, for a great campaign, the consumer should and will be in it. And I think it's also like tapping into the relatability, but also the emotion. Like, we always see like, for example, like Dove, or like when you think about the Super Bowl advertisements and commercials, like the ones that always stick out and stand out are ones that are probably humorous or make you like shed a tear because there's a little bit of emotion. So I think it's really not talking to the consumer, but relating to the consumer, but also having the consumer as the face of the brand and the campaign.
So that makes me wonder, because what you said makes complete and total sense, and I can definitely see it going in that direction. Has obviously a business leader and a business person, you can't watch every single Instagram post that someone puts out there. You can't read every single thread. You mentioned using tools, right, to be able to monitor what's happening, social listening, sentiment, and you have to, because you have to begin to kind of aggregate all this information that's out there and taking place to get just kind of a snapshot or a picture of what's happening over time. You touched on it earlier, but what metrics do you look at in your social tools that kind of give you a feel of kind of what's happening? And understanding you may dig in at times based on the metrics you're seeing, but kind of what are those overall metrics that you're looking at?
Yeah, so for us, our top KPI would be the average engagement rate. So that's like definitely the most important. We want to make sure that the content that's being put out and disseminated is engaging, it's entertaining. Um, there was a time where we were just pushing out content just because we had it. Like, oh, we paid an agency to create this, let's just post it. But it had low engagement. So now we literally, for every piece of content, ask ourselves, what is the value here? Is there a value proposition? Is this going to help somebody? Is it educational? And we have different content pillars that we ask, okay, does it fit into one of these pillars? What's the point of posting this? Because if it's just a pretty picture, let's not waste space, because the platforms are already overcrowded and just it's just not going to do anything for us. And if anything, it'll hurt us in the algorithm because not a lot of people are engaging. So engagement rate, I would say, is number one. Most recently, we've been looking at saves and shares. Like, is it share worthy? Like, I think that's something that's very new. Like, looking at what people are sharing so that we can create similar types of content and see what is interesting to people. Why are they sharing it? Why are they saving it? And then we see like a lot of people actually doing this. And when we're creating more content, it's rewarding us with more engagement and more shares and more saves. So that's great. And then just like interactions in the DMs. And then one thing that I think is also important is, I know we said it's a vanity metric and the follower growth shouldn't count as much as it did like a decade ago, but the retainment of the follower count is really important because with, the platforms and the algorithms kind of cleaning out like bots and things like that, it's really important that we have like a net gain of followers, because we have seen, especially like after we've done like giveaways, we'll see like a high spike in follower count. But then when the giveaway is over, if they did not win, we see they drop. So that's not valuable. That's not what we want to see. So I think retention and retaining is super important.
Oh, definitely makes sense. So I'll leave you with this. Has someone who had to build a community, especially for a legacy brand, if you had to give advice to, one of the other B2C marketers out there who's in the same situation, they're in your same shoes, but maybe a few years behind, and they're thinking about leveraging social to create that kind of community. But again, they're in a legacy brand, they're kind of starting from scratch and doing this, trying to make that transition from retail to digital. Kind of what's that piece of advice that you would give them that would really kind of point them in the right direction?
I would say don't talk about it, just do it. Because I think a lot of times we get stuck in meetings with executives saying like, we should do this. And these are we strategize and we plan, but we never actually execute. I think it's just stop thinking so much and just do it. Like, make the channel, post a prompt, ask a question. Like, everyone else will reply and it'll take off and it'll do its own thing. Like, don't overthink it, because I think you kind of self-sabotage in a sense when you overthink something that should not be. So yeah, I would just say go for it, do it, don't think. And then worst case, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, and move on to the next.
Yeah, learn and change, right? I mean, that's what it's about.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
You have to adapt. Exactly.
Great advice. Great conversation. Assunta, thank you so much for your time today. We're super happy to have you.
Yes, thank you so much. It was great.